Thank you for staying with us on Independent Television. This is Road to 2019. I'm Wiyad Mofwegbe in for Sonny Duke Okosun. Now, as the election draws closer, it's only natural that we begin to, or continue rather, to have conversations around that big event, as I'd love to call it, on this program. Today, we just want to focus on something that's topical, and it's very crucial as far as not just the 2019 general election is concerned, but all through the electoral process at every point in time. We're looking at how important it is to have vibrant opposition in a space, in a political space, such as we have in Nigeria. Again, particularly looking at the fact that the election here is obviously upon us. I'm joined by Austin Osakwe. He's the Executive Director of Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. He's also a public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, my pleasure.
Let's talk about opposition. I'm not very sure what the definition is for that, but at what point do we say we have viable, vibrant, robust opposition in a political environment?
Well, generally in the conduct of human affairs, we are meant to be opposed.
Right.
The moment we hold views, there will be those who hold contrary views. This is only natural. It has often been said that our adversary is our friend because they help to sharpen our skills, our intellect. They keep us on our toes and ensure that grass does not grow under our feet. So that conception is positive on opposition. However, in political circles, the moment you have a two-party system or a multi-party situation, you certainly have one party controlling government. All others who are outside of government at that material point in time become opposition parties. Don't forget that the focus, the motivation for participating in political competition by political parties is to be able to get control of power, to do the utmost good for the greater majority of the people. That is the ideal. So you have government in power, you have party in power, and then you have party in opposition or parties in opposition. Now the question is whether the presence of the opposition serves to further improve the fortunes of politics itself, the fortunes of governance, and by implication, the fortunes of the people who are governed. Generally, a vibrant, constructive, and virile opposition helps the government in power to do better. An opposition party, for instance, will certainly be critical of the party in government. It serves to x-ray the activities of the party in government, points out the defects inherent, and is supposed to salute the achievements of the party in power. This is where the problem is in Nigeria and indeed in African setting. Perhaps with politics worldwide. It is difficult for the party that is not in power to see anything good in what the party in power is doing, to see anything good in what government is doing. Because of this mistaken impression, perhaps because of our level of development, that when you adulate, when you celebrate pluses in government, you are yielding ground to the party in power towards the next election. So we tend to have very corrosive opposition. We tend to have very cynical and skeptical opposition. So, but that does not deduct from the fact that for there to be good governance, for there to be development, opposition party, a vibrant one, are not just a necessity, they are a sine qua non. They are indeed an imperative in our political dispensation.
Let's do a candid and extensive, if you like, assessment of what we have today in Nigeria as opposition. Does that meet standard on the one hand? Then on the other hand, does it do the most good to majority of the people?
To appreciate what the state of the present opposition is, we need to look at it in comparison with the opposition, the nature of opposition that we have had in the past. And one stands out very clearly in the First Republic and particularly in the Second Republic. And that is to do with the presence of the late Chief Jeremiah Oyeniyi Obafemi Awolowo, who in the First Republic led the Action Group Party in the opposition. And again in the Second Republic led the Unity Party of Nigeria, UPN, in opposition to the Shagari government. Awolowo today stands, both for friends and foes, as a reference point, a classical reference point of what an opposition party should be. Obafemi Awolowo and his UPN were not cantankerous. They were not looking for blames. They did their research. They were essentially a government outside government. In other words, they were a shadow government waiting to take over the reins of power if the people so wished. So what Obafemi Awolowo and his young lieutenants did was to pick every policy of government, dissect them, did ample research, and came out with a position where they were saying that government had done wrong. They would present what they thought should have been done the right way. Where they felt that government had done well, they would present a position that would be better than what government was doing. There was a time between 1979 and 1983 when the Nigerian space began to witness serious depression at the level of the economy. It was not just in Nigeria. It started in Europe, Asia, then to America, and was creeping into Africa. Africa was going to be hard hit because we had the least preparation to absorb shocks of that nature. It was the late Obafemi Awolowo who first sounded the warning that there was a sweeping depression going around the world and that it would come to Nigeria and it would not be easy to bear. He sounded that note of warning, presented facts and figures. Unfortunately, the government at that time, the MPN government at the federal level, led by Alhaji Shehu Usman Aliyu Shagari as president, along with his party, wished it away. And actually derogatorily, condescendingly assured Chief Obafemi Awolowo that they had the best economists that the country could boast of and that everything was okay. They were on top of the situation. A few months later, the country witnessed a very traumatizing depression in its economy, which led to the introduction of several measures, which we now refer to as the austerity measures. That is a credible opposition. That's a vibrant opposition. That's an opposition that instilled confidence in the people. So, but look at today. Yes, we have opposition parties. What we find is that those in opposition are in opposition waiting for an opportunity to join those in power. That's why you see all kinds of, in fact, it's difficult to define opposition now. Because the man who is in party A today jumps into party B tomorrow when party B is in power. If they get in there, they don't get what they are looking for, they are back. So they give you all kinds of reasons for moving from one party to another. It becomes a yo-yo affair. So it's difficult now to define which is the opposition. Is it because this particular party is not in power? This opposition party that we're talking about, what programs is it presenting to the people as an alternative to what the present government has? So that's our issue. The essence of an opposition is not just to virulently attack the one in government.
It goes beyond that.
It goes beyond that. It's to provide a roadmap. What the party is saying, look, we want votes from Nigerians because we can do better than these people who are there. We're not going to offer excuses. The other side of the coin is that when a party is so virulent in criticism of the one that is in government, and it gets the opportunity to come into government, what do we find? Is a litany of excuses as to why they are not doing well. They begin to even behave like an opposition party and begins to cite the failures of the past as the reasons why they are not performing in the present. But there is no doubt at all that the quality of opposition is reflective of the overall nature of what society presents at every point in time. Because those who go into government, those who constitute political parties, those who constitute opposition are part of the Nigerian space, the part of the socio-political Nigerian space. So that's exactly what the situation is.
Let's talk about internal politicking. To what extent does internal politics, or internal democracy, as some persons will call it, affect the stand of the opposition? Because they say charity begins at home and justice from the next door. So if we can't get it right within the party structure, how then do we confidently say we want to put up viable, forward-looking, result-oriented opposition?
Unfortunately, the manner in which political parties are organized sounds a death knell on internal party democracy. Because basically, political parties still remain largely properties of a few powerful individuals. The party is owned by what Nigerians now famously refer to as a cabal, a group of business people who see themselves as investors, who bring out their resources to organize the parties. They are in a position to begin to pick who should benefit from the largesse that, of course, will come from being in government. They determine, political parties are supposed to hold primaries. Primaries are a process that will sift through all those who yearn to hold offices and present the very best. So there's a filtering sieve that presents the very best from the party. Because what the party is saying is that Nigerians, we have people within our ranks who can deliver on the economy, who can deliver on social welfare, who can deliver on infrastructure, who can deliver on foreign policy, who can deliver on security. We have them in our midst. So the essence of the primary within the party is to sift these ones, like separating the wheat from the chaff, present them to Nigerians as the very best. What we find is that leaders of political parties, these same investors who now hold the reins of the party, they decide who comes. They are not focusing on capacity. They are not focusing on who has the ability to deliver on the manifestos of the political parties. It is who will be loyal to the leaders. And loyalty there, if we write about loyalty, it can give us several books, depending on who is defining the concept of loyalty at one point or the other. So, the absence of internal party democracy is not only affecting political evolution, it's affecting negatively the standard and quality of governance. Because if two parties present candidates, Nigerians don't have a choice. They have to go with the two that are presented. But somebody will argue, we have about 90 political parties. They are presenting candidates. But you and I know that the state of our political development right now is not such that one minor political party somewhere with very limited resources and limited spread across geographical zones in the country will present somebody, no matter how good that person is. It's not a goodness. Politics is beyond somebody having capacity. Politics is having resources to sell your ideas to all nooks and crannies across the country. So if a political party has a good man, a man who has done it well, and is not able to go as far as the remote areas of communities across the country to sell himself, is not likely to get to power. So the importance of internal party democracy cannot be overemphasized in the overall evolution of politics and its impact on governance. Therefore, for us to have quality opposition, we must first have internal party democracy.
Right.
Because what that means is that it gives room for people to exhibit what they have, to express themselves freely. Internal party democracy dwells and thrives on the level of transparency and accountability within the party. So if there are people who know very well, who have capacity, who are very good, and they are suppressed at the level of the party, during meetings they can't talk, They can't buy funds to contest even internal primary arrangements. They do not have sponsors or godfathers, as the case may be. They will just be proving that old age saying that in the burial ground, in the cemetery, we have the best ideas, we have the best brains. So they just remain latent. Nobody's exploring them. So you need internal party democracy first to allow intellectualism to flourish within the party, to open up the party to fresh ideas, because it is these fresh ideas that will do researches and present alternatives to whatever is going wrong in government. So, poor internal democracy, poor opposition within the political space, and poor governance.
So somebody told me a few years ago, a politician actually, that it is not correct, in his opinion, to say political parties in Nigeria largely do not have ideology, because according to him, whatever a political party sees as its objective at every point in time is its ideology, or at least a large part of it. Let's look at the place of ideology in internal politics and overall in electioneering altogether.
Well, those who say every political party has ideology, they have a point.
Right.
But whether that point is relevant to contemporary discourse in our politics is a different matter. When they say every political party has an ideology, it's like saying every human being has an idea, which is true to an extent. But that idea you have is for what and to what end? This is the issue. Does that idea that you have separate you from the other person? When we say political parties do not have ideology, what we are talking about is not just peripheral ideas about governance. It is the ideology that differentiates you from others. It is the ideology that goes to the root, not only of what I will do, but how I will do it. And I'll give you examples. We look at the Democrats and the Republicans in the US. You will know that there's a difference between the Democrat and the Republican. That's why they talk about democratic strongholds, not because of tribe or religion. They talk about democratic strongholds, Republican strongholds, because of what that party represents in sync with what that area desires. So if you have a situation, for instance, where a political party says it's going to provide free education, and the party in the opposition says, of course, we are also going to provide that. Do we now say they have the same ideology? No, sir. We'll go beyond that. How are you going to fund your own free education, and how are we going to fund ours? Ideology now goes to the root of one party saying we will fund free education by increasing taxation. And the other says no. If we increase taxation, it will impact negatively on business and productivity. We will fund free education not through taxation, but by taking directly from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, because of the value we attach to education as an army that liberates the mind and a vehicle for transmuting from a lower qualitative state to the other one, and the impact it has on technology as a drive for development. So ideology goes to the very root. I'll give you another example. The Republican Party says, look, we are the grand old party, GOP. We owe nobody any apologies. As far as immigration is concerned, we are for America first. So we're going to curtail immigration. We are going to ensure that immigrants don't have a free ride into the US. And the Democrats said, no, America was built on immigration. Immigrants laid the foundation for America. So we will soften our approach to dealing with immigrants. Where there is a good case, let them come in. We have what it takes to absorb them. It makes America only better. That's ideology. So when you come back to Nigeria, what politicians say, what political parties say, are just sermonization and proselytization. We do not have any concrete arrangement put in place to realize promises, to deliver on promises. So what do we have resort to? We're going to do roads. We have been talking about roads right from since independence, even before independence. We've been told we will give borehole to a community. We're going to build schools. We're going to build health centers. This is what we hear. And we have remained at that level. And the reason we have remained there is because we really do not have an ideology that looks at promises and takes it to the level of how we are going to deliver on promises. Ideologies are the things that make parties stable. When a Republican, the recent elections that were just, these midterm elections, 24 hours ago, in one of the states I was watching an independent who was returned as a member of the House of Reps. But they said he was caucusing with the Democrats. So even though he was an independent, his beliefs were more on the side of the ideals of the Democratic Party than the Republican. So what that means is that there will be stability within the party. You can't just cross to the other side, because this party has those things that you so believe in that they are part of you. They are part of your very essence. When you leave them, it's like denying yourself. Are you following what I'm saying? That's ideology. So that's why I say, those who say all parties have ideology, fine. But to what extent? The ideology we are talking about is the one that is rooted in both promises and delivery on promises. That makes this party so distinct from the other one, that when you move from one to the other, you deny the very essence that you stand for as a human being.
Are you watching Road to 2019? We'll just take a quick break at this point, so we'll be back to push this conversation further. Stay with us.
As the race for 2019 elections heats up, join Sonny Duke Okosun every Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. as he brings you profiles of key actors, insights, and in-depth analysis on the issues as they unfold on the road to 2019. The stage is set as the political gladiators try to outwit and maneuver their opponents in the politics or politricks on the road to 2019 with Sonny Duke Okosun. Tune to ITV on GoTV channel 107 and Star Times channel 130 every Friday 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Road to 2019 on ITV, a must watch.
Okay, let's talk about political parties now in terms of numbers. Evidently, in recent times, there have been political party proliferation. We understand we have them in dozens now. Does that change this narrative about opposition for the better? Does it strengthen the quality of opposition in this country?
Unfortunately, it tends to even weaken opposition. Some have said, I have no way of verifying, some have mentioned that the proliferation of political parties is deliberate. That one party may just be responsible for over 50 of the other parties.
So is that a sort of conspiracy?
In which, of course it is. In which case, stooges are the ones heading some of these, what somebody has referred to as mushroom political parties. And why not call them mushroom anyway? Because, I mean, let's face it, we talk about over 90 political parties. Some of them don't even have a presence in more than 1 or 2 local governments. Look, the reason I support the registration of political parties again and again is founded on 2 pillars. Number 1 is constitutional, the right to freedom of association. I, Austin Osakwe, can decide to get a few people around me and apply to register a political party. I have a right to freedom of association. That's 1. But whether that one will achieve overall purpose is not dependent on pillar number 2.
Which is?
Which is that the present system where INEC insists that a political party must have national spread is a disservice to Nigeria. I believe that as an Edo man, I am first and foremost an Edo man before being a Nigerian. If I believe that my focus in my developmental work is to promote the ideals of Edo and to work for the people of Edo State, I can decide that the political party that I am setting up along with others will only operate in Edo State. I don't care what's happening in the 35 other states and Abuja. I want to work for my people. I want the political party that I represent, that I work for, to work only in Edo State. And we will focus on Edo State. A situation where we deceive ourselves. We are a nation in denial. Let INEC come and swear Osusumaye. They said a political party to be registered must have a national spread. Let INEC come and show us the papers. apart from those things that have been doctored to get registration, are there any of these political parties that exist in more than a few local governments? So we live in denial. Why don't we just do the simple and abandon the difficult? We are a nation that likes complexes, and therefore we fail even before we start. So the first thing INEC must do is to go back to that requirement and say, look, and I think the National Assembly should be part of this process. Look, you don't need to have a political spread, a national spread. If you are a political party, you are only going to work in those states, please go ahead and work. Or you want to work only in South states, forget about what's happening in the other areas. We know why they talk about national spread. Again, the denial. We feel that if we ask political parties to have a national spread, we are promoting national unity, in spite of all that we have done in this regard. Is national unity more today or less? This country has never been so divided as it is now. What that means is that we need to see it as a problem and begin to address it. It's like the issue of the NYSC. Somebody said we have to continue with the NYSC because it was set up somewhere to bring Nigeria together. And I'm asking, the students who go for NYSC, when they come back, what are their experiences? Do they feel closer to the people from the other side? Or they have experiences to share that just buttress their innate belief before now that this country is divided? So for me, all politics is local, for God's sake. All politics is local. Politics is a vehicle for developing communities. Pure and simple. So let us have political parties. If these political parties know that they don't have the resources, my brother, to run a political party, try running a small club. Set up a club of 30 people and try running it. It requires resources. If we know that we are deceiving ourselves, these political parties are not thriving nationally, let us have them as what they are, either regional parties or state parties or even local government. My brother, I can decide that my interest is Noredo local government. We want to do so much in Noredo that Noredo becomes a flagship and becomes a reference point for other local governments and in these states across the country. What is wrong with that? Let's face it. The parties as we have them today are not delivering on promises. They are not delivering on security. They are not delivering on social welfare. They are not delivering on infrastructure. They are not delivering even on making Nigeria proud through a radical and dynamic foreign policy. It's not there. Look, if we must be honest with ourselves. If we want to get this country right, we need to sit down and bring all these ideas to the table, jettison the ones that have been there that are not working, and embrace new ones. It takes courage, sir, to say the direction in which I have been going is a wrong direction. I am willing to retreat. We now want to try this. Because only a mad person continues to do the same thing over and over again and is hoping for different results. Prayer won't do that. Other countries are taking children to the moon. We are leading our own to prayer centers. We are talking of development. It's not working. So for me, political parties are proliferated, but that's only relative. We see it as proliferation, we see it as mushrooming because we have set up standards for them that even angels cannot attain. We are asking people who don't have enough resources to move around one local government to be moving around the country. So this mushroomed political party, these over 90, become bargaining chips for the two major political parties. They are just bargaining chips. They are looking for who to support.
Let's talk about young people. We're going to come back to the issue of proliferation of parties and some sort of measures that we usually see, particularly around the election period. But let's talk about young people now. We understand there's so much of awareness. People are becoming more conscious, politically speaking. Whether that's just as a result of the election that's upon us or not is another issue. But let's look at the fact that young people are beginning to show tendency generally to want to participate in the political process. How much of value does that bring to this conversation?
This is one area that those who know me know that I'm very blunt. I was in the vanguard that began the process of calling for a generational shift in leadership. I still support that. I believe that it doesn't make sense for septuagenarians and octogenarians to seek to rule over a country that is dominantly youth. We need fresh ideas. We need persons who have a broadened horizon, a larger world view, not dinosaurs. So I am all for that. But you see, we always want to place the cart before the horse. The young people we are asking to come and, I don't want to use the expression take over, because nobody gives you anything anyway. The young people we are asking to become participants in the political and electoral process, how ready are they? In what field are they going to operate? And I just mentioned that politics is an expensive business. It's not only in Nigeria.
Can't we change that narrative?
No, it's not only in Nigeria, sir. Look, when you are going to the farm, you ask yourself, what are you going to do and what implements do you require? The nature of our politics is very expensive, sir. Because, again, it's labyrinthine. It's gargantuan. Nigeria has 36 states. One of the states is bigger than many countries in Africa. Edo State, for instance, is bigger than several countries in Africa on their own. So we're talking of 36 of these huge states in one country. So what you require is first to focus on the little that you have energy for instead of focusing on the whole. So it is expensive because a man who wants to, we are presidential candidates, without private jets, you can't run election in this country. You can't run campaign because the campaign period, campaigns will start now by November 18th.
Right.
Election is February. So we have basically 3 months of election. We are talking of running around 36 states and Abuja for a presidential candidate. We are talking of visiting local governments. We are talking of holding meetings. We are talking of doing fundraisers. We are talking of media appearances. We are talking of debates. This is in billions. Somebody must provide the billions. So when you say a man is not probing people who are alleged to be corrupt, I laugh. Aren't we deceiving us? It's not possible. Somebody says, for instance, he couldn't buy a phone for election. I think the phone was just about 12 or something million or thereabout. The man said he didn't have the money to buy it. But he was crisscrossing the country with private jets campaigning. He was doing media appearances. He was doing fundraisers. And they had to pay every agent at polling booth. They had to provide for security. My brother, when you see the way money is deployed during election, you know it's not a poor man's business. The man who couldn't buy phone, people brought that money. If they are in his government, then his hands will be tied. This is the reality. So the point I'm making, sir, is that when you say young people should go into such an arena, young people, most of them have no jobs. Unemployment today is the highest ever we have had in the history of this country. Anybody quote me? The young people have no jobs. Very many of them are afraid to get married because they don't have a bed. Because that's the first thing. You must have a bed before you go and marry. They don't have a bed. Not to talk of hiring a house and paying rent. They don't have the resources to go and contest elections, to worsen by the fact, sir. And this is real. We can deny it, we can begin to deceive ourselves. The average Nigerian electorate today, the average Nigerian voter, who will call Austin Osakwe to come and take a bottle of Coke. Oh man, I like you. I mean, you got to take a bottle of Coke today. The moment Austin Osakwe announces that he is going for the position of councillor, today to come and buy him beer. So you ask yourself, what has changed between yesterday and today? He has made up his mind. 2 things. Number 1, the reason Osakwe can say he wants to go and contest, he don't hammer. Number 2, Osakwe is going there to go and loot. He's going to make money for himself.
Isn't that always the case?
Let him settle me today. That's the case, sir. That's why I say we are in denial. So against that background, it becomes very expensive for you to come out and say, I want to go and seek for votes. Unless you want to sell your conscience from the very beginning. You want to mortgage your essence, because When money begins to roll out, we know you don't have. You want to contest election, money is now coming. Some people are putting the money there.
Right.
And the fowls will come home to roost. Those who have put the money there will call for it later. And of course with interest, because there are rewards for factors of production. The one who makes land available knows he will get rent. The one who puts capital into a project knows he will get interest. The one who sells his effort knows he will get wages. And then of course, the entrepreneur who provides everything and coordinates is looking for profit. So when they put money into your campaign, they will ask for it. This is the reality. So for me, while it is desirable for more and more young people to express interest in the political space and participating in it, they are largely unprepared financially to partake at that level.
What's therefore the role of young people in viable opposition?
They need to organize, because we won't just keep lamenting and pointing out all the deficits. We must provide a roadmap.
Right.
The cure for these desert places I just mentioned is organizing. Young people who are interested, who are desirous of participating in the political space must organize themselves, because if one man provides money, he can only provide what one man is capable of providing. Number two, if 10 people provide, they can now provide what 10 are capable of providing. But it's not about money when you organize. It is the fact that today, in the history of this state, there is no governor, there is nobody who won governorship election that scored up to 500,000 votes. Nobody. No one. I say this on open air. Nobody has scored up to 500,000 votes. So a young person who desires to become governor must, before the election, get his 500,000 votes ready. And you can do that among young people. So if young people are saying, look, these old people have refused to go, they have not left the space for us. Oh, beautiful. Organize yourselves. Get your 500,000 votes ready.
But you need resources to do
not
that.
Not to be bought.
You need resources to do that.
You don't need resources for that. That's why I'm coming. That's why I talk of organizing. There is no community today where you don't have young people coming together. There's none. What we just need to do is to harness all of these islands of youths, of young people. And women will be on their side. Just link them up. Spread information. The social media is there for us to use. Young people control social media. Over 95% of the inputs in social media today is by young people. Less than 40. So what do they need to do? Use the social media for information spread. Organize themselves from community to community. And then whatever little resources they can garner among themselves can be in the till for support of this enterprise. So if young people decide that for this election, it's a young person we are going to vote for, 500,000 votes, you install a government for Edo State.
Let's talk about something that's usually the case when we have an election cycle like it's upon us now. You find some parties saying they are collapsing their structure and doing what the banking sector people will call a merger and acquisition.
Yes.
And then they form some sort of alliance.
Yes.
Do we see any of such in the horizon?
No, but it's inevitable. It's there. And that brings me back to what I was saying, that a lot of these parties were actually formed by those parties already in existence.
The established ones?
Oh, yes. Because the time will come, they ask for collapsing. That's one. Two, they use those parties to prepare agents, electoral agents for polling units. They are just foot soldiers. And then, outside that, those parties that were not formed by those who are already in existence but formed on themselves, they were formed for the purpose, because they knew from the beginning that they were not going to make any impact in terms of electoral votes. So they are bargaining chips. They use them as bargaining chips. So when the time comes, say, well, we are here. We have 200,000 votes. They may not have 20, but it's a bargain. And then they collapse their structure and they get what they can go get and zap and wait till the next round of elections. So it's inevitable it will happen because the political parties are not strong. They don't have structures on the ground. And for a political party to have spread, to be structured, it needs resources. Look at the amount of money that is being mentioned by the two major political parties. You know that it's humongous. And it takes many people and takes a long time to put those resources together. In Nigeria, a political party that has not served in government will soon atrophy. It can't survive. They will not like this. They don't want to hear this, like those in government. The truth of the matter is that the reason the governor of a state is the leader of the party is because he's the one who brings out the resources to fund the party. Otherwise, the chairman of the political party is the leader. The reason the president of the federation is the leader of his political party is because he holds a war chest. The party needs money, they go to him, cap in hand, begging. He doles out appointments. He doles out patronage. So when you have such a thing, the possibility of our present political system achieving good governance and development is looking more like a mirage. I once said that the reason local governments were not surviving is because across political parties, local government fund is used for running the party affairs at the local government levels. So it makes governance very precarious. The small political parties you have, I've seen some names. I don't want to advertise them here because they haven't paid. But I've seen some names come up in these small political parties. People I know have the capacity to translate words into action. What will die with them? They won't rule. They are not going to get the votes. They don't have the resources. Media appearances, very expensive for political parties. And so, if you need to appear in the media to sell your message, it's huge. Let me tell you, sir, and I challenge the politicians, they are looking at me. Those rallies you see, rallies that you see, they want to go and hold rally in Upper Sapoba. I challenge them to mention how many people in Upper Sapoba are in that rally. That rally where you see thousands. It is the same vehicles that transported people to the rally in Upper Sapoba that will transport people to the one in Gobai, that will transport people to the one in Ugbeoko. It's the same people who are going around and to attend rallies, my brother. You ask yourself, at the level we are in, that's why the American elections plays out in the media. American campaigns plays out in the media. Rallies are well organized and orchestrated. The rallies you see around Nigeria are paid for. You jump into the vehicle, they give you 1,000 or 2,000. I hear now that there are merchants, middlemen, businessmen. Their job is to provide you with the number you need for a rally. You need 2,000 people? Give me 5,000 each. He goes out to pay 1,000 or 2,000 to those he's taking them.
The bottom line is it brings them.
It brings them, that's what's important. And because by again, our denial and self-deceit in this country, we rate political party success according to the crowd that we see in rallies. They are hired crowds, sir. They are hired crowd. The black man has a problem. Self-deceit. We know what is right. We are deceiving ourselves. We leave the simple and go for the difficult.
In 2 minutes, as we wrap up now, let's properly situate the place of the people, because ultimately this is about the people.
Yes.
Let's situate the place of the people, the public, especially the voting public, in light of having a viable opposition in a country such as Nigeria.
Unfortunately, sir, the people who ought to be the masters, they are very unfortunately servants. They back. I'm not sure they can bite. The power rests with the people. They hold the vote. But two things have robbed them of the ability to play that role. Number one is poverty, which is orchestrated by the ruling class. As long as people are poor, they have no words of their own. They have no principles. A poor man, a very poor man in Nigeria can't afford to be principled. The reality dawns on him. That's why it is easy. And that's a new and dangerous trend in our politics. Very soon we won't be hearing campaigns anymore. People will just keep quiet. Then when election draws near, that day of election and 2 days to, they start rolling out money and buying the votes. And they get into power. That's where we are going if we don't curtail this trend of vote buying and selling. The people, some people have argued, and I have seen it, I read here in the past, look, I should know. When you argue that, what will the 2,000 naira they give you for 4 years? The 2,000 you buy your road, you sell your house. It's a baseless argument. The person who is accepting 2,000 is not sure of tomorrow. He's only focusing on today. And for today, that 2,000 can bring soup and garri to make a bath for the person and the children. It is the immediate. That's what poverty does to you. It robs you of your very essence as a person. It robs you of independent thought. It robs you of principles. It robs you of scruples. That's what it does. So poverty is a major tool. The people have no say whatsoever. They can make all the noise. But when that day comes, the lure of 2,000 naira is powerful. That's one side. What of those who will not accept money? They are there. Majority of those ones are plagued by two things. Number one, many don't go out to vote. The elite among the people who ought to know the difference, who really do know the difference, don't go out to vote. They see voting as being left for the wretched of the earth, the dregs of society. Some have argued that it is the manner in which the electoral process itself is organized. I have seen voting in Dallas. I have seen voting in North Carolina. I have seen voting in Europe. I have seen voting in Toronto, Canada. People just work. Some people vote from home. They have gotten to that level. They vote from home. They vote from the office.
So technology now drives the process.
Yeah, some vote weeks before the election. Those who want to vote that they just walk in quietly, they cast their vote. There's no militarization. You can leave your office and go and vote and come back. But in Nigeria, we lock everywhere up. And weeks before the election, we start telling people it's do or die. We start mobilizing police and soldiers. When you see, nobody's looking for trouble, sir. A week to election, they are telling you they are deployed 35,000 people armed to the teeth. And you are asking yourself, why should I leave my house and go and look for trouble? Anything can happen there. That's one. The second thing, militating against this other group that will not accept money, is ignorance. A lot of people do not understand the power of the vote that they have. Yes, they will not. They have gotten to a level where they will not accept money to go and vote. They see something palpably wrong with it, but they are telling themselves whether we vote or not.
Doesn't make any difference.
Will remain the same. These people will come, they will loot the treasury, they will go away with it. Look at that one, look at that one, look at that one. They have several examples, and it happens again and again like a merry-go-round. And so, the power that the people have, the power that is reposed in them, the power that is inherent in them, they sell it or palpably lose it.
And that's sad, and incidentally, that's where we're just going to tie it up on this discussion. Austin Osakwe, thank you for coming on the program. We appreciate it. I've been talking with the Executive Director of Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change, Comrade Austin Osakwe, on the program. I'll be back here next week. I'm Agumofo Egbe. Thank you for watching.